the reputation has to be priority. And when you start introducing clients that aren't supportive of what you do, who you are, and even things like providing material, you could be doing this as an investment to your future or as a marketing job. But now you're in a position where you put out a product that you're not happy with. Okay, you did all this work, you took this large concession, you're not making any money, you thought you could market it, and now it's a product that you don't want to market. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Modern Craftsman. Today, I want to talk about what you would walk away from a job for. It's a conversation that's come up quite a bit. And even recently, we've walked away from some jobs that just weren't the right fit for us. And, I know we all struggle with it. We get, emotionally tied to clients and projects, and we're in the midst of it, and and it's just not going well. Well, I think that there's a real case to have in terms of walking away when it makes sense. And you're going to hear some examples that both Tyler and I have worked through, hear about some jobs that we ultimately did walk away from, even some jobs that I wish I walked away from that I didn't, and what all of this has to do with the reputation in the bigger picture. This podcast is brought to you by Andersen Windows. If you're looking for architecturally authentic windows, look no further than Andersen A-Series product line. Designed in collaboration with architects, Andersen A-Series products are very finely tuned, clad wood windows and doors.
Their matching sight lines, matching glass setbacks, and size options will help you bring any architectural style to life down to the smallest detail. And with numerous glass options and composite exteriors, they're Andersen's best performing and most energy efficient products, capable of withstanding some of the toughest conditions.
They're a great fit for historic projects or any projects where you need to achieve an elevated look with top tier performance. For more information, head over to andersenwindows.com/modern craftsman. This podcast is also brought to you by Buildertrend. Spring's here, and if your job's anything like mine, it sounds like a swarm of subcontractors and smells like sawdust and stress. Look, busy season is awesome, but it also means stuff falls through the cracks, and Buildertrend's to-do feature helps keep every task, follow-up, and oh shoot, I forgot about that moment organized.
You can assign tasks to your crew, set deadlines, and make sure nothing gets buried in a group text again. It's like a checklist, but one that actually gets used. If you're juggling 10 jobs and 47 sticky notes, it's time to level up. Go to buildertrend.com/MC demo and see how to-dos can save your sanity this season. Don't wait until you miss a slab pour. Schedule your demo now.
This podcast is also brought to you by Velux. You're always looking for ways to wow homeowners, and who doesn't want more natural light? With Velux skylights, you can transform any space by adding more natural light without sacrificing privacy.
Bring to life focal points, including the kitchen or the living room, or brighten up small spaces such as closets or bathrooms, and leave your clients speechless. Learn more at veluxusa.com/remodeler.
And you guys know we partnered with Harnish Workwear. Well, it's a brand built by the trades for the trades. Through unwavering focus, physical discipline, and devotion to mastering their craft, Harnish doesn't just make workwear, it sets a new standard for how they show up, both on and off the job. This is more than clothing, it's a commitment to a lifestyle of growth, performance, and elevated purpose.
The new H-Label line is changing the game. You get high-quality work uniforms with performance-grade fabric that moves with you, not against you. No excessive bulk, no second-guessing your brand image, just sharp, professional design backed by innovative fabric tech that protects you like a multi-layer system while wearing like a single layer. And when it comes to printing your logo, it's dialed, clean, durable, and consistent every single time. Built for the field, designed for the future, tested by the industry. Harnish. Elevate what you wear, own what you build.
For more information, head over to harnishworkwear.com. And make sure you click up top where it says partners, and you can join the Modern Craftsman and get an exclusive Modern Craftsman discount code. That's for the Creator 1 and the Pioneer 1 and the H-Label Work Spec t-shirt. I came across this question the other day, and I found it interesting because, I'll get to real examples even these last couple months and years. But the question was, what would you walk away from a job for? And the question was really rooted in the fact that, they were asking me specifically where it's like, we're so committed to doing particular type of projects, when is it that we decide to basically say no, or when do we walk away from a client? And specifically, we had more than one project that we actually walked away from last year. And we kind of got into this long discussion about, are you blowing your charger cord like a Nintendo game?
So I don't know if you could hear that, but
I can't.
I'm plugging it in and it just keeps making this
Bloop.
noise where it's like bloom bloom, and I guess there must have been water on the counter in the other room
Mm,
where it was sitting, so I think it's wet. So yeah, I'm trying to dry it out before I like fully fry my computer.
sick.
Um,
But we ended up walking away from our project, and we were talking about, like, why, like, what really drove us to do that. And I'll be honest, it was a really difficult thing to do, because you sign on these projects, you want to be a good steward to the project, to the client. And we had a very difficult conversation, and truthfully, internally, I was nervous, going to a client saying, hey, we're no longer going to proceed with this project. And the particular project, we were in pre-construction. There was a lot of planning, and it started to evolve in all these different directions with no real clarity. And despite the meetings that we would have, or we try to get on the same page and summarize things, it felt as though we hit the mark on that, and then it would be like, yeah, but we're not. I need you to do this, and it was just constantly like adding things that were out of our scope. And ultimately, I let the client know that, hey, we're gonna part ways. We just don't feel like as though we're going to be, a good partner in this. The expectation coming into it was one thing. Now the expectation has changed, and I can sense the frustration this early on. And we're just, I don't feel as though we are delivering, and we're going to be able to deliver to your expectation. And client responded basically, hey, I understand, I appreciate you being upfront. Can we chat? Of
was
course.
this during pre-construction?
During pre-construction, yeah.
Yeah.
And we they wanted to hop on a Zoom because they're remote. And I remember the Zoom being kicked way out. It was like a week or week and a half from when I informed them. Like, great, I get to spend the next week and
Yeah,
a half about thinking
mulling
about
this over.
what this Zoom call is going to entail. And ultimately, they were just, they asked, what went wrong, where, and what can they learn from it, which I so appreciated. And we weren't obligated to necessarily like refund any money, though we gave our pre-construction feedback, less the cost that we had incurred, simply because we were the one that ultimately canceled the contract. But we just explained to them, when we got into it, we had this expectation that we were going to help really plan everything out, and then all of a sudden it turned into this kind of handyman list of things. And we're just not a handyman company, and we don't have the manpower to do these miscellaneous projects, in and out of the home, where we were supposed to do this really big project all in one shot. And it really got me thinking about this conversation about, well, what would you walk away from a job for? And and that one can be summarized in the sense that we were just being asked to do things that were outside of our scope, and just putting us in a position where we would not be successful. We would fail miserably and make the client upset, and tarnish our relationship. There was other things that we were asked to do that were more tied to like legal obligation, which was going to put us in a position where we were, how do I say this? Like could have been involved in some sort of lawsuit, where like that was,
That'll do it.
I was like, listen, we're not interested in doing that. And when we started the project, I had that conversation. It was like, no, we're not, there's no pending lawsuit or anything. This was a previous contractor. And that evolved and, and changed. And it wasn't even just us that was uncomfortable doing that, but then all of a sudden our trades are like, wait, I don't want to be involved. I don't want to write a report that could potentially be used in a legal suit. So they were like, I'm not interested in doing the job. So we explained, at this point, we can't get involved. We don't even have it's not even that we're uncomfortable, but we're getting to a point where we can't even staff the job appropriately, because rather than us just doing our job, we're being, we're getting involved in something that is much bigger and frankly, just something that we don't want to be part of.
Yeah, I would say that coming into a project that has previously failed or in the midst of a project where a contractor walked away is a huge red flag for me.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a couple of them early on. I've had one, uh, maybe a couple that have gone successful. One was a buddy of mine who asked me to do a project, and I was like, I can't work for friends. And then he hired somebody else, and it was like really bad. And he called me and was like, dude, I need help. And that was fine. But the couple other that I like distinctly recall, I kind of knew I shouldn't have done it in the first place, but I didn't have enough confidence to just say no or walk away from it. And it pretty much wound up exactly how I envisioned it. And I think the big thing to consider when you're pulled into a project like that is that there's always two sides to a story, and it might not just be, hey, this contractor did crappy work.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's a challenging client that's creating that environment, and doesn't understand how to properly work with contractors, and then you're dealing with trust issues and everything else. So I've walked jobs, and when I was younger, I think when I had a little less confidence in myself, and I've balked at what other people have done, or judged somebody for the work that they put in place. But typically it's that way because of many different factors, and not just that person wanted to rip somebody off or didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah. I mean, we've probably talked about another project that we did a takeover on. And I mean, looking back, I mean, this is, God, I forget. I looked at the contract at some point. It was definitely pre-COVID, and we worked all the way through COVID to completion. I mean, it was a very small, I shouldn't say very small. It was a very average size 2-floor condo in Boston. And it was a takeover, and they were pretty far through roughs when we took it over. And when we had met with the client, the expectations were extremely high. Like, as we went through the project, I would consider the expectations to be unreasonable.
Yeah.
Especially at, a constant negotiated price. But when we took it over, we realized that there was a lot of things wrong. And if we were going to be held accountable for this, we needed to go backwards. And we undid a tremendous amount of work, but there were certain things that we didn't. And I remember, I mean, the truth be told, I remember taking on that job because I was like, this is an opportunity for me to do something that is, more aligned with what we want to be doing. Like we absolutely had the ability to do what was being asked, but we just hadn't been awarded that opportunity. And frankly, the design and the challenging expectations was intriguing to me. And I, looking at the original contract value, we could have never done that project for what we originally signed it for. And ultimately ended up being like 5x that. And even we recently looked at it from a financial standpoint. We didn't make any money on that job. We lost it. We actually lost a ton of money on that job because of how long it went on. And there was things that were outside of our control. And there was, obviously COVID in that, but it really just tied back to what you said, is there was this level of expectation that was just borderline unreasonable.
Yeah.
And, and that is, to your point, I would say it's 3-part. It was the client had these expectations that were unreasonable, and it was, which, I can blame them for, but I can also blame myself in the sense that I didn't communicate what the expectations should be. And instead I basically was, heard what they said and said, all right, we're going to achieve that. And then we had some trades on that job that were extremely difficult to work with, that, kind of had this, I've deemed it like the artist mentality, where it's like budget and schedule don't matter. Just let me do my thing and it will be done when it's done. And that, there was trades on there that literally took years to complete, and then had these I'll call them micro issues, And the micro issues just were, you know, the expectation was that it would be perfect. And when there's a micro issue, it's everything.
Yeah.
So then it's like, rip it out. And we literally ripped out part of the work twice, put it back together. And then there was like a different issue with the result. So then we had to, then it like started the whole process over again. Knock on wood, like we're done.
Yeah.
And there hasn't been a single peep about, from the client. And, but it's a frustrating process because we took it over. We knew we could accomplish, or we felt as though we could accomplish what they had asked for, but it was just that it was this complete uphill battle. And, thinking back, one of the things that I certainly regret is not pushing, again, this is years ago, I think 5 or 6 years ago when we officially started that project. No architect, we had an architect that basically do a permanent set of drawings, but, when you're talking about super modern, super contemporary, reveals, details everywhere, and you're not detailing that stuff out on the drawing, it becomes just this compounding cost in time.
Oh yeah, because you're having to figure out everything. Yeah, and there's no way to capture that time, account for that time. The client doesn't feel like that's equitable time that they're paying for, even though that would have been in pre-construction or design if you're getting a bunch of heads together to discuss how this were to be built.
What you just said. We interviewed for a job yesterday with a client, and this came up, and I said it would be really. It's unfortunate that you can't do it, but it would be really interesting to see if someone approached the same exact job, and one said, "I want to go through pre-construction," and the other said, "I want to skip pre-construction and I just want to build it."
Yeah,
and see how that unfolds, and because I would argue that there's absolutely going to be some sort of compromise on the let's just build it process. And it's either going to be, you're not going to end up building to the intended design. So you're going to make all these compromises and it's going to end up as a A- B+ product versus the A+ that it was designed, or you're going to end up over budget and behind schedule.
Yeah.
It's highly unlikely that it ends up exactly as expected, on time, on budget, because I just don't see a world where, unless, or I guess the third option is that it ends up on time, on budget, and of expectation, but the builder makes no money.
Yeah. I think that it's difficult enough to design and execute a project without putting a proper plan in, or with putting a proper plan in place. Even doing all of that, you still run in to roadblock, you still run into challenges. There's still compromises, that there's still not necessarily meeting expectations. And I think that it just makes it that much harder if you don't put a plan in place prior to. You don't have some sort of benchmark roadmap to go off of. It's not as though, you do pre-construction and it's done deal, everything's buttoned up, good to go. You still are experiencing all of that. You're just not really giving yourself any sort of chance to check all of those boxes for your own business and for the client. I think it is important to note that one of the options is that contractor not making money.
Because that happens a lot more than, I think even a client understands.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is self-inflicted.
Totally. You could argue that all of it's self-inflicted.
Yeah. And it's just expecting that this is what needs to be done at this price. There's no other options. There's, you can't charge more. There's not a market for it. And just going through the motions and putting work in place and not managing a project correctly according to scope, schedule, and budget. And just thinking, hey, this is the standard for the industry. This is what you have to do. It's hard to make money, which is a completely different conversation.
Well, the argument that keeps coming up with, oh, it's just a different market, my market doesn't support that price point. My argument there is there's a couple of things happening. Number one, those guys that aren't making money and losing out on these projects, or losing out on these on profit on these projects is, falsifying the actual cost of construction, where it's like, well, that guy built it for $500 a square foot. It's like, but he made no money.
Yeah.
Like, he literally either made no money or he lost money. So you're building this average based on the fact that these failing construction businesses are driving the average down. The other side of it is again, back to pre-construction, is what happens in pre-construction is that you guys, or when you're pricing something, you're either not putting enough work into pricing it, so it's not super accurate. So you have all these false allowances that aren't adequate enough. So then you end up having to VE things last minute, or take it on the chin. And the other side of it is, from a speed perspective, when you're working through pre-construction, besides accuracy, you need to get that information to the client quickly, because I can tell you about another failed job is, pre-construction for us. We were in pre-construction for a project for over a year. And it was, and we were there. We were working constantly, like hundreds of hours into this project, and design was unfolding faster than we were pricing. And I remember in that exact moment, I remember exactly what happened in that moment when I was like, oh shit, like they've already moved on to design development on the interiors, and we haven't even got our updated pricing finalized.
Yeah.
And we, internally, that job ended up not happening, like, at all. They just canceled the job, don't want to build it, put the property on the market. Like, that was way too fatiguing. I don't know where we fell off base. Like, we started this project at one number, ended up double, like, and I sat down with that client, and I wanted to understand, in this whole experience over the year that we've spent together, walk me through where you felt as though the failure points were. And the number one thing he said was just speed. If you had communicated faster how much that this was going to cost, I would have felt more comfortable, pulling the rope in a different direction. And, and I think that that's why we promote pre-construction so much and talk about it. Our interview yesterday, I kept talking about with the client. I'm like, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here. I'm just the reason I push this so hard is because we all want the same goal. We want to build the house that you want. And the only way to build the house that you want at the expectation that you expect is to understand going into it, truly what this is going to cost and how long it's going to take.
And how you're going to build it. Obviously, like, what you're talking about is expectations, communication, a lot of red flags in that. I think for me, early in my career, somewhat along the same lines of not having enough belief in myself, and not feeling as though I really had established myself enough to tell clients that they didn't have the budget for what they wanted done, and I over executed a lot. So now, like, a big thing that's going to make me walk away from a project very early on is just the unrealistic budget expectations.
Yeah.
And I think that affected me more when I was younger, because again, I didn't have like the wherewithal to pull back and not over execute. I wanted to protect my reputation. So even if they didn't have the budget and I was signing the jobs, I was over executing on those projects, which was costing me so much time and so much money, where it's like, I look back at a lot of those projects and the budget was sufficient. It just wasn't sufficient for what I was doing. And, back then I could be doing those projects for that cost, but I should have had the mindset where it's like, I just can't do this 100%. This doesn't need to be near perfection for this price. And communicating that to my clients, I have enough confidence in myself now where it's like, yeah, we can do this work. I have the ability to put the team in place and to execute this work contract and this design as you see fit. But for what you want to spend, we can't do that. So if there's certain aspects of the project that you want that way, yeah, we can do them to that standard. But if you want the overall project to that standard, it's going to be X amount more. And I don't think I had the knowledge or the confidence to have that conversation with the client. So whatever the budget was, I would say, oh yeah, this is good. This is the top of the market. This is all I can get. I'm just going to take this project and I'm going to turn it over and it's going to be the best thing ever. And without managing that project correctly, I was just losing so much time and money, especially with employees, because it wasn't just my own time. Like, you're literally bleeding budget. And by the end of the job, you have subs coming in, buttoning up jobs, and you're like, I don't have any budget left on this project for it. So you're learning too late, and then you're starting the next job to try and catch back up, and it's just this like vicious cycle of digging yourself deeper and deeper.
I agree with that, but I'll push back on the sense that I do think some clients just have no idea.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it's, and so there is that self-educate, like that, or that educating the client, early on, hey, what your expectations are is really aligned with this, whatever price per square foot, however you want to communicate that. But, I've had clients where it's like, yeah, I just don't see why that like, why would it be $800 a square foot when my budget, I really want to be at 500, and I've been told I can do it for that. And so that's where, where I'll come in and do, say, a rough order of magnitude, budget, where I can walk them through kind of a line item budget, or I'll pull out an example of another project and walk them through how it adds up. Because I think sometimes when you get into these projects, there's just this failure to understand all the bits and pieces that go into it.
Yeah.
Where it's, I'll give you an example where I just finished pricing a small project for a project in Boston. And it's definitely a project that, it doesn't fit. I wouldn't say it fits our criteria, but it opens up an opportunity for projects that do. It's in a high-rise building. So what happens with those is you become a preferred contractor, and then you start doing more and more work in those buildings. And there's certain buildings that everyone wants to be part of. So this is exactly that type of job. It's an opportunity job. But, I'm chatting with someone, that works in that building, and he, they decided to price it with a couple of builders, and the initial feedback is like, Nick, you're way high. Now I'm looking at it, it's not a huge job. And if for me to be way high says I'm either doing this and making money and no one else is making money, the expectations are different, or I'm including things that someone else isn't. And that's usually what it comes down to, is that someone strips stuff out of it and makes all these exclusions to, obviously make a number look better. But I was going through it, and I've said it before, our proposals and estimates are super dialed. There's 1,500 line items in it. Everything is added up. So when I'm going through it with the client, you can see item by item what stuff cost.
Yeah.
And, and I was going through it today, making sure I didn't miss anything. And I did miss a couple things, and they're small items, but it's like, there was a note on one drawing that said, please include film for the window for the office doors. It's like, all right, well, that's $1,000.
Yeah.
Like, and that's, sure, that's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, but, did the other builder capture that? And when you start adding all of those things up, it's, across, again, 1,000 line items, it adds up to a lot of money really quick. And that's a big reason why we're so transparent in that process, because it makes it easy for a client to understand. Is like, oh, that this is, yep, $1,000 makes sense. I do want the window film, and when they're seeing it at that level, essentially they're self-validating the cost. And sure, some clients say, yeah, this is all great, and I understand that all these line items make sense, but the overall number is too high.
Yeah.
And it's like, sure, what do you want to take out? Because I can sit here, like, you want to take out the big things, like boom, boom, boom. Now I'm 50%, but you need HVAC, you need plumbing, you need electrical, you need the millwork. And it's just, and so it gives, at least for us, when we're going through this early on, even at a ROM or a pre-construction, it gives the the client the confidence, but also the autonomy to kind of pull the levers that make sense to them. And ultimately, we're collaborating on how to get this project to be feasible.
I've had projects that I've walked away from just from like communication style or the way that people have spoken to me or treated me. Or my team, where I'm like, oh yeah, this isn't going to be a good fit. Like, this is probably foreshadowing how this project's going to go. Like, I had a project for a client that's can afford whatever they want to do. A referral, did all of the screening, and then when I was there measuring for the project, there was an issue with something with the cleaner in the shower door, and the husband was like screaming at the wife, if this person does this one more time, they won't have a job anymore. And like, it wasn't the wife's fault, and like, it was really it wasn't a huge deal, but I was like, I finished measuring, and then I like said my goodbye. And at that point I was like, this is not a job that I want to take. Like, if somebody talks to me like that, I'm going to have a difficult time just being my best professional self.
I also think like if they talk like husband and wife, if they don't respect one another.
Yeah, for sure.
Like that's definitely something that is a red flag for me. If I'm meeting with both of them and they're rude, inconsiderate, or disrespectful to one another, like, fuck that.
Yeah, well, it's like
the person that you're supposed to respect the most.
For sure. And then also, it's like every single decision that they're going to have to make on this project that we're going to be a part of, that's going to be the attitude and like the foot that they're putting forward. So I've always, that's been a huge indicator of somebody being a fit. Like, people are always asking us, how are you screening or vetting your clients? Like, to me, it's even how they reach out via email, how they communicate that, what their first words are saying. So like, something that I typically turn down or don't really put much stake in is when somebody reaches out to me and like their first words are, hey, like, want to know how we get a price to do this, or hey, wanted you to come out and give me an estimate. And a lot of that is just lack of education. But if they have the mindset that that's how they're going to go through this process, for me, that's a pretty big red flag, where it's like, I can either take the time trying to educate them and win this client over, or I could wait for the next email that comes in that says, hey, got your number from so-and-so, really loved your work. We were over at their house this weekend. They had a party, their first floor looks amazing. Want to talk to you and get a little bit more information about what your process looks like. To me, that's like, all right, green light. Let's extend this conversation and spend my time here, rather than the person who just had this expectation that, for right or wrong, or however they came up with this, that just we are obligated to go do something for free for them. And how to, like, what do they need to do for me to come visit them and give them ideas and free pricing? So communication is a huge thing for me, and how they reach out, how they treat people on my team, how they talk. Like, I've had clients who have tried to manage subs and spoke to them a certain way, where it's like, I need to draw a hard line in the sand right now, that this isn't how this gets done.
Yeah. I've had one client in the past that I would say, maybe two, but the one I'm thinking of is that they treated my team incredibly poorly.
Yeah.
And, they, we had a woman on our team, and he actually went out of his way to call me and basically apologize for the way he spoke to her, but no one else. Strictly her. Like, I shouldn't have spoke to her that way, but then proceeded to basically say the rest of us were imbeciles and, completely belligerent. And it was difficult, because in the moment I'm looking at, like, how do I get out of this? And, absolute screaming match one day. I show up, like, we're trying to get into the job. We're told that we're not allowed to get into the project. Our tools are locked in his house. He's not giving them back. Like, get the F off my property. And I'm like, holy shit, man. So I just sat there in the driveway, and he's in his house, and he called me, he goes, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just waiting for things to simmer down. Like we're literally like 5 days from completing the project. And I just figured I'd wait, and we'll get this resolved. And I think ultimately like an hour and a half went by, and we were like allowed back in. And it was so frustrating and so disrespectful along the whole way. And we were, we were finishing the job. I mean, it was a unbelievable project, super detailed. We actually did a lot of the design in house on this one, and it just like everyone was ecstatic. Like it was just like this super high level of execution. And then, that last 5% of the job, it was, a microscope of this is wrong. This is wrong. This isn't what I approved. This is like and and then pair that with, I want you to do this. I want you to do that. Can you also do this? Can you also do that? This growing scope. I mean, we end up being like the scope from a contract value, I think, grew by like 6 times.
Yeah.
And I remember being in that position where it's like, I need to walk away. I want to walk away. This isn't good for my team. This isn't good for the morale. Like there's no respect. There's no appreciation. And listen to what you said earlier. There's always 2 sides to the story. Whoops. My phone is ringing through my speaker. There's always 2 sides of the story. I don't think that there is, like, not here. Like I will be the first to admit like where we went wrong. And if we had done anything wrong, like I'd be the first to admit that. It was just a very unique situation with someone like you mentioned, someone that can afford anything and feels as though we're, just, servants.
Yeah, that's a huge problem. I always said that like part of what I wanted to do for the trades is just gain more respect. And I think that anytime that a client treated me or my team as though we were below them or like indentured to them, it was a hard no for me. Which along the same lines, like I've had projects or leads from the outset where I just had this gut instinct where I'm like, this isn't the right one. And I don't know how many times I got burnt by like them convincing me that, yeah, like this is a great fit, or tempting me with like, yeah, it meets everything else. It meets the budget. The design's cool. It's a great opportunity. And somehow I get persuaded, or like the sting of the last one wasn't bad enough, but I had a gut instinct from the outset that it eventually led to future problems and manipulation. But like I knew it was there all along. And whether it was just being hungry, needing work, again, the opportunity there, that golden carrot, whatever it may be. But like the gut instinct is a real thing. And I cannot stress enough for you guys and girls who have this instinct within your gut that's telling you to walk away from that job, how important it is, regardless of how hungry you are, because all that's going to happen is it's going to go south, and you're going to cost yourself so much time, so much money, and so much of your reputation, your mental health, your sanity, which I'd rather see you have no work and sit at home and try and work on your business than lose money working for somebody that you knew that you shouldn't have. And like, I have so many, I have those jobs as recent as like within the past 2 years where I still like haven't learned. And I'm not doing that many jobs per year, but I'm like, I can't get away from this. It's the same thing like designers. Like there's certain designers that I should just say no to, and I know that I should say no to, and I didn't. And it's the same thing. Like it burnt me so badly.
Dude, there was an architect a couple of years ago that a friend of mine who's a builder and myself, we were both working with this architect, and we would commiserate through text message like about the the nuances and the frustrations. And he finished his project first, and I was like, how'd it go? He goes, at the end of the day, it was all right. And I was like, all right, 6 months ago, you said you'd never work with this guy again. What's your thought now? He goes, we would. And I was like, dude, I don't know if I could do it. We finished the job. Yep. We'll do it again. It's like
the sting has worn off.
This thing is worn off, but I also think that there's something to say about, obviously, like, I mean, depending on the situation, like the belligerent client, no, the sting doesn't wear off on that. An architect that's difficult, it's like, all right, you learn how to work with them, and maybe they didn't make your life hell. It was just a different process. But it's like you kind of sit back and think about it after the fact and realize, okay, well, yeah, there's frustrations, but there's still a lot of benefit to working with some of these people.
But yeah, some things can be challenging, like in the heat of the moment as well, when you're emotionally invested in a project and there's a ton of stress and timelines.
Yeah, you just need to understand what's the upside. One of my favorite examples of this is a client we didn't work for, and it was in 2021. This architect reached out. Insane house. Insane. Like, I think on the front side of the house, there was this 22 story, 22 foot.
Say that's a big,
that's a high rise, a 22-foot curtain wall. And so like commercial curtain wall of like, hell yeah. Like this is dope. I want this house. And so I'm going through the drawings. I hop on the phone with the architect. I'm like, going through, I'm like, hey, is there a budget set? And I want to say they were like, yeah, he's trying to be 3 million. And I was like, wait, what? He's like, he wants to be 3 million. He knows it's going to be more, but like, that's his goal. I'm like, this is an 8,000 square foot house with a 22-foot curtain wall in the front.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is $1,000 a foot, if not more. Like, what are we talking about here? And he's like, well, he's still interested. He wants to get a price from you. And I'll never forget, I was headed to Charleston, that day, and I promised the proposal on Friday, and I'm literally in Logan Airport on my laptop, sitting in security, like typing the email, and I send the email. I close my laptop, put it in my bag. I get to the security checkpoint. My phone dings from the architect, and he goes, "Holy shit, $8 million! This isn't going to work. We'll talk soon." And I was like, dude. I'm like, okay, like this is just like the expectation. Like, why am I spinning my wheels here? So the client's like, hey, I'll meet with Nick. I'd love to hear his process. So we get on a phone call. I'm standing in our rental down in Charleston in the backyard, and I'm giving him my spiel. And he goes, Nick, I have to say, man, I love this. Like, you are obviously an artist. Like, if you built this house, it would literally be a piece of art and it would be perfect. I just don't give a shit about that. Yeah. I want to build this house for $3 million. I want a big ass house, and I just want to do it as cheap as I can. And I was like, the emotion that went through my mind was like frustration, sad, annoyed. And then I was like, but I appreciate that. Like, I obviously wish I knew that sooner.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the fact that you just like straight up, it was like a shit sandwich, but you gave me a compliment, but in the middle it was like, but I don't want to work with you. And you just spent 60 hours wasting your time pricing this project.
Yeah. But at the same time, like, you probably should have known that from the get-go as well, with based on what the architect said. Like, so but again, that self-inflicted.
Yeah, 100%. And I look at it, I was like, whatever, like, gave me the opportunity to price another $8 million house. It gives me experience, blah, 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 like gets me in maybe the door for a future project. And interestingly, that architect showed up in my inbox recently. He was responding to one of our like marketing emails talking about 45 Wood Oak. And I was like, hey, whatever happened to that job? And he goes, oh, no, he never built that house.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. Like, of course he didn't. Like, no one was doing that for $3 million.
I think on like the smaller jobs, also something that always has been, I just saw this the other day on plans from an architect where it was owner supplied materials. And to me, that's like, no.
That's a no-go?
For like client supplied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
as
any
far
materials or what?
like finishes, like kitchen cabinets was like
Hmm.
owner supplied cabinets, owner supplied fixtures. To me, that's just it. It's not in the grand scheme of things. It's not a big enough price, and it costs me too much headache over the years. Anything. Do you even? I had a project which was another hard no. I should have said no. Working for a neighbor, and I knew beforehand. Neighbors
Hmm.
and friends, another hard no.
Hmm.
But like it was a neighbor wanted me to do their kitchen, told my wife no, didn't really ever want to do it or love the guy that much in general, just like a
Oh
hard
man. Yeah.
personality, and did it. And then it was like, oh, I want to save a couple bucks by supplying these things. I had already, that was already at this point 5 years into my career, hard no. And then gets a fire clay sink. I go to get countertop template, or I go to fit it into the cabinet because they're all like every one of them's different.
Hmm.
And I open the box up and the sink is damaged that was like in his garage. So now it's like I can't get countertop template until you get a new sink here because all of these sinks are slightly different in size. So this just wound up costing me how much time to my schedule and process where I'm like, I just, this is the type of thing where if he was that adamant about it and I couldn't educate him as to why it wasn't a good idea, yeah, that's a hard no for me.
Would
Friend and
you have
family.
done it if you were compensated for managing that and compensated for like the loss?
I still would want somebody else in charge of it, like from
Yeah.
like a designer's perspective, right? Where designers are supplying materials. I've learned that I'm fine with that, but I need to put an allowance in there
Mhm.
for me accepting, me
Yes.
like understanding what these things that they purchased, how they go together, and if there's missing parts, that it's going to take me time to go through and
Hmm.
figure out what's missing. So I'm fine with doing that if a professional did the measuring and is accountable. But for me, it's still tough because, like, realistically, like I have to back charge the designer for that. Like, I can't
Hmm.
really charge the client for that. Hey, what's this charge in here for you accepting the designer's delivery and making sure like, to me, that's like if you're selling it, you should be opening up and then you should be delivering it to the project. If you're putting the markup on it and everything else.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would say that we're more lenient in the sense that I'm fine with owner or designer provided material, but we are capturing, time and markup on that stuff. And,
Yeah.
and primarily like plumbing fixtures is a huge one in Massachusetts because Massachusetts has crazy plumbing fixture um, codes where it's like there's all these fixtures that you can buy, but they're not mass compliant.
Yeah.
So who's checking to make sure this stuff works? And also, are you then sending me the spec and then I'm asking my plumber to look through this stuff and make sure none of this stuff is
It's
crap?
too much of a headache. Like you're already I'm already like, nope,
Yeah.
no chance.
Yeah.
Like it just it with
I'm
everything
with you.
else that's going on, why? Like what are you saving yourself? Tell me what you want and I'll send it to my vendor and you'll pay the markup on it. It'll be warranted. If you buy this and this breaks in 2 years, I'm not warranting it. My plumber's not going to come fix this for free. So like you want to pay it just
Yeah.
and to me what ends up happening is it's you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you don't make money on it, you're screwed. If
Hmm.
you do make money on it, now they're pissed because you like
Made
charge
money.
them money. Yeah, so it's like I don't know. I'd rather be damned and make the money and at least cover my ass.
Yeah.
That's just something that's been a hard no for me for a long time. It's led to more challenges and
Hmm.
things that I either can't account for, cost me time, headache, or lead to just like resentment on a project
Yep.
that I think isn't healthy for like the overall project.
I think, and your projects are smaller scale too. Where I think if we were doing a kitchen renovation, they were like, "We're just going to buy the cabinetry ourselves." Like at that point, it's just they're such big percentages of the overall
Yeah,
budget that it makes less and less sense. Where for us, usually like on a main, like on a house, everyone wants to buy the appliances because they can put it
yeah,
on their credit card.
that's one thing I don't buy, and I'm
Yeah, I'm
fine
like,
with that.
I'm fine, and they're like, "Well, what if we buy the plumbing fixtures?" I'm like, there's we've had a couple scenarios where we'll do all the work and we're getting paid for all the specifications, working with the architect, make sure everything is good, and then they just call the plumbing company and give them the credit card because they want the points, that's fine. But we still get the markup on it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Or if they're providing something, it's like, that's fine, but we have clear language saying we are not responsible for any of this. If it's damaged, if we need to work with it, we need to return it, we need to repair. Like, you are accepting full responsibility on it. And usually that's enough for, it's like, all right, you handle it. And if not, then we also communicate that, we're going to also get the best pricing. Even though a lot of these plumbing supply companies, they market this stuff retail, and then you go in as a regular homeowner, and then they're giving you a wholesale discount anyway.
Yeah.
It's like, sure, but we, in theory, if we have a good relationship with these, we should be getting a deeper wholesale discount, or be leveraging a group buying discount or something like that. So, and we pass that on, where it's like, hey, we're passing on the best price. Like, we still get our fee on everything, but we're at the line item pricing, you're paying less if you're ordering it with us, and we're taking responsibility.
Do you know one of the biggest things for me with that is that just like I want to be accountable, and I want to own everything, and I don't want to be frustrated. And even like plumbing fixtures, if I'm owning it, if I'm purchasing it, if I'm determining the spec on it, if I'm providing that where the block needs to go for the plumber, and something winds up being messed up, like, I'm the only one that I can be angry at, where like, if somebody else does that, my plumber's not going to be happy. I'm not going to be happy. It's making them come back again, whether I'm getting paid for it or not. When that happens multiple times over a job, or when that happens every job with your plumber, finally they're going to be like, dude, what the hell's going on? I don't care if I'm getting paid for it. I'm on another project. I have to pull off. Like,
you're just making my life hell.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. So for me, it's like, in order for me to get the results that I need, which again, this is like why I would walk away from a project, is this is my process. And if you aren't good with my process, then you shouldn't hire me, because it's not just like, it's about the overall process. It's about the price. It's about the expectation, the communication, what I do right, what I do wrong, my strengths, my weaknesses. This is part of my process. And if this doesn't fit your program, then you should, as a client, as a customer, you should be finding somebody who does fit that program, because that's that important to you. And I think understanding that helps you understand who your client is, who you should be marketing to, how you should be vetting your clients, and everything else. But at the end of the day, for me, my process and what I would walk away from, what I'm good with, how I vet clients, is all based on protecting my margins and protecting my reputation. Because like, I need to make money to be in business, and I also need to preserve and maintain my reputation to continue to be in business. And once somebody jeopardizes either of those things, especially reputation, like when you want me to do something that I'm not confident in, or that I have to leave my name on, or that just doesn't look good, and I'm concerned with somebody comes and walks that project and sees all of this dumb molding around the bottoms of the cabinets that didn't need it, like, regardless I'm getting paid to install that shit or not, to me that's like my reputation.
Yeah.
And I'm not okay with that, and it really frustrates me. It's not about the money at that point. It's not about the profits at that point. It's about ensuring that it's something I can be proud of, that when somebody comes in and walks in, they'll be like, oh yeah, like, he did this job. That's a great job.
I think that's a great point to end on, is like, the reputation has to be priority. And when you start introducing clients that aren't supportive of what you do, who you are, and even things like providing material, you could be doing this as an investment to your future or as a marketing job. But now you're in a position where you put out a product that you're not happy with. Okay, you did all this work. You took this large concession. You're not making any money. You thought you could market it. And now it's a product that you don't want to market.
What's also, you worked 15 years to be in business. People longer than that, even if it's 5 years, you've been in business 1 year, you've been working so hard to create this reputation for yourself. Now you're going to allow some client's program to jeopardize your reputation. To me, that's like where you draw the line in the sand, where it's like, I've worked really hard to get here. I'm not going to allow your program to jeopardize my future and the future of my business.
Right. If you guys want to be part of these conversations, we're going to be doing a live workshop once a month on Instagram. On one of our posts, just comment workshop on one of the posts. We'll send you the information on that so you can sign up And like I said, we're going to do this live so you guys can join us. We can have real conversations about this. We appreciate you listening to the podcast, but we want to open this up to a larger format and something that can be more interactive and involve you guys. And also make sure you head over to our website, moderncraftsman.co, sign up for the newsletter. We'll have more information on the newsletter. I've been putting out this, what I would think is a killer Monday morning email. And I'm sharing a lot more transparently about what's going on in my life and my business, and just sharing a little bit more behind the scenes. And you guys that are reading it already have been amazing with the responses. But if you haven't been getting those, you need to sign up for the newsletter, and those come out every Monday morning. And it's literally me sitting down first thing Monday morning, 7 a.m. at my desk, and spilling my guts on something I just dealt with and how I worked through it. So as always, we appreciate you guys listening.
Trust my mama, you're no match for my bad karma.